We're already 10 weeks through the college football season. That's just absolutely nuts. Regardless, welcome to the Stock Report, where we take a look at which prospects helped their stock and hurt their stock this past weekend in college football. So without further ado, let's get into the Ohio State-Penn State matchup. Starting with Buckeyes corner Davison Igbinosun, and quite frankly, him and Denzel Burke had pretty big weeks there for the Buckeyes, and were a large part of why Drew Aller was only throwing to Nicholas Singleton or Tyler Warren, who really most of his production came in the second half. But the wide receivers for Penn State were just shut down. And Igbinosun had a huge game. This is a guy that wants to be physical, wants to play physical. He's stupid strong. This is why I always say I feel like he's got a little safety in him. I feel like he got a little safety in him. And he's been one of the more flagged corners this season. I think he's got like 8 or 9 penalties on the year. So this is something you're going to have to deal with him, like teaching him to kind of reel back and be a bit more discreet with his hands. But near the end of the half was probably like the most fascinating part of the game for Davidson, who the Penn State, they're trying to get in a scoring position. They started the game up 10-0. Then they relinquished the lead back to Ohio State. So they're trying to get in scoring position, field goal, touchdown, whatever. And you got Igbinosun guarding Harrison Wallace. Harrison Wallace hits him with a couple of jab steps. And Igbinosun, he kind of bites, gives up his leverage, and goes to like hold. Try to like slow down Wallace. Does kind of like a meh job at that. Gets flagged for holding. But it didn't stop Wallace from catching the ball downfield. Bing, bam, boom, 21-yard gain. It's like, oh no. Oh no, are they going to get hot to end the half? This is a home game. They could go into half with some momentum. Then, watch out. And then, to close the half, Drew Aller, he tries to go to the, not necessarily the corner, but like kind of the sideline of the end zone. Throws kind of a, not necessarily a 50-50 ball, but trying to put it where only his receiver can get it. And granted, dude, Wallace, I thought, made a good play on the ball, just ultimately didn't come up with it. The unfortunate thing was, instead of it bouncing out of play, it bounces back towards Igbinosun, who, I mean, we could talk about the penalties with him, but like, he plays sticky coverage. And he was there the minute that thing bounced in his chest, like covers that sucker up and manages to keep a foot in bounds for the interception. It was freaking remarkable. It was a thing of beauty. And I mean, from there on out, like he had himself quite the game. Had a pass breakup later on, only allowed 2 receptions for 29 yards. And keep in mind, one of those was the 21-yard play. This was a good game for him and Denzel Burke. I think it helped both their stocks. They're still kind of in that midday 2 area, but I thought the secondary for Ohio State was freaking phenomenal in this game. But I want to stick with the Buckeyes and talk about Donovan Jackson. And some people might think this might be a bad thing because he didn't have the best game. Some would say he had not a great game, but he was playing out of position. So normally the left guard there for Ohio State, because of injuries with Josh Simpson, Simmons, there we go. I was like, Simpson, that doesn't sound right. Josh Simmons. He's had to kick out to left tackle. And I thought for the most part, he did an okay job for being a guard. I think this kind of sold me on like, no, he's a guard only because I like the athleticism. I like the quick feet of Donovan Jackson. It just works better in more of a phone booth, more of a phone booth. That's the best way to put it. Rather than him having to go out and play against arguably a top 15, top 10 prospect. To be fair, man, he kind of got murdered, man. Because, like, again, he was facing Carter, who's a phenomenal athlete. I'm going to talk about it in a second. And he got murdered there out in space. So, maybe, again, it's like kind of you want to take this with a little grain of salt. Like, oh, he can't play tackle in the NFL. Which I think that's fair. He can't. I don't think he should. But he's got the length. I think he's got the athletic ability. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. This is kind of his first time having to work with that much space. So used to working in said phone booth playing with a tackle and a center next to him. But I thought he didn't do the. I didn't think it was that bad of a job. I know some people are gonna be critical. I think he's got like a 0 pass blocking grade for on PFF. But like you watch the tape and it's like, oh man, okay, he had some good reps, man. I don't think it was all bad. He was really good as a run blocker, I think, in this game. I thought he was pretty darn solid. But this is one, if you view him as guard, you're going to just kind of throw this game out. Like, you won't be counting this game. But everybody loves the NFL draft, and I know you want to be familiar with every potential prospect that your team may draft. So I got good news for you. My draft guide is available for purchase. It is good throughout the entire draft cycle, and it updates through the season regularly. You'll get my current evals and rankings on hundreds of different players with player backgrounds and analytics. It also contains combine and pro day numbers, as well as my notes from the Senior and Shrine Bowl. You can purchase it for a one-time payment of $30 on PayPal, Venmo, and now I have the Cash App. Follow the link in the description and be sure to include your email because it is a Google spreadsheet. That is how I share it with you. So please don't make me hunt down your email. Just don't do it. Anywho, it's a great purchase and it's a great way to support the channel. Now let's talk about Abdul Carter, because listen, I get it. He was facing a guy in Donovan Jackson who normally plays guard. But this was still an impressive outing. 4 pressures, 4 defensive stops, a sack, a 27% win rate. And it's not like this is just one show. And he's done this the last month and a half. And admittedly, coming into the year, I was one of the lowest guys on Abdul Carter. And it wasn't because of anything to do with the tools. We know he was a great athlete. He is a great athlete. My question was, okay, we haven't seen him play full-time as an edge player, hand in the dirt, go it and get after it. So there was for me a little bit of pause, and I wanted to see it before I actually believed in it and throw him into like top 15, the top 10, like most people did. Because I did have questions about like, is he gonna play to a physical enough level when he's immediately gonna be encountering and having a block shed? Like, are we gonna see that? Because as an off-ball linebacker, there were times where he struggled to shed blocks once he got engaged by offensive linemen. But no, he's been absolutely wonderful, not just in the like as a pass rusher, but also in the run game. So like, I think he's made a great case to be edge 1 in this class. But for me, it truly comes down to a toss-up, because the next guy I'm going to talk about is James Pearce Jr., who also has been very good the last month and a half. He's coming off a big game against Kentucky, where he had 5 pressures, a sack, 2 defensive stops, and a win rate of 30%. Now, I get it. Kentucky, not the best offensive line, but he's been doing this week in and week out the last couple of weeks. Now, he doesn't have like the size, the play strength of a guy like Abdul Carter, but he is a disgusting athlete. He's probably the most explosive edge player in this class. Like, he gives me shades of Brian Burns, like legitimately. So like, I think right now we're talking about a 2-horse race for edge 1. And then we're going to have some other guys that are kind of like on the outside looking in, like, maybe throw my name into the race there, whether it's like a Jalen Walker, a Nick Scorton, LT Overton, we could talk Mikael Williams, guys like that. But I think right now the race is between Pearce and it is between Carter. I think these are the guys that have separated themselves thus far this season, and they looked hella impressive. And like, low key, like, Pearce is actually doing hella good as a run defender, and that showed up in this game against Kentucky. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep with the edge position. I want to talk about Kaimon Rucker out of North Carolina, who's coming off a very good game against Florida State. Poor Florida State. What are they, 1-8 now? Yeah, rough go of things for Florida State. But he had a good game, 8 pressures, 2 defensive stops, had a sack, had a win rate of 33%. Might not be a name you've heard much of this season. A lot of that had to do with injury. What was the injury that's kept him out? It was a knee injury. that sidelined him after week 1. And he just returned, I think, in like week 6 or 7. But like the last few games, he's really turned it on. Be like, oh, this is why people were talking about this cat going into this season. Because again, if you're unfamiliar with him, 6'2", 165, a guy who has this compact build and just plays with really good natural leverage. He plays with very active hands as a pass rusher. The play strength's pretty darn good with him as well. Plays with a very high motor, but he does lack some of those elite tools. He's on the shorter end of the spectrum. I'm kind of curious what his arm length will measure out as, because there are times where he does struggle to shed blocks. He isn't like the most explosive pass rusher in this class, but the last few weeks, it's like how people felt about Javon Solomon after the Senior Bowl, I feel like is where I'm currently at with Kaimon Rucker right now. And it's like, it's been impressive, but I'm kind of curious, is he kind of like short with really good length? I think the length's going to be around that 33-inch arms, but I'm not entirely positive. And we'll see, but man, we got to talk about, you got to give this dude a shout out. I know this edge class is beefy. It's getting beefier. Now I'm looking at this like, oh man, I wonder who's going to return. Like there's a lot of good names, and like, shoot, a lot of names I haven't even gotten to yet. Like Jared Ivey, Derek Moore from Michigan, Elijah Roberts from SMU. Talk about Gabe, was it Jackus from Illinois? So like, man, this class ain't lacking on the defensive line. Not a one bit. I mean, and so much so, I'm going to continue to talk about the defensive line with TJ Sanders. I don't know if, like, I feel like every week I'm finding a new guy that I kind of want to throw into the first round, or at least in the top 50 in it. I think that's actually where I have TJ Sanders currently as a top 50 grade. Oh, he's just outside with a midday 2 grade. Might be pushing it up because he's playing really good football. He's 6'4", 290, so he is a little undersized, but he gets after it. He really does. It might not be explosive, but he's shifty, he's quick, he's sudden. He's really good at setting up pass rush moves. He's ridiculously strong, so don't get it twisted. While he might be a tad undersized, he is still got a very, very good muscle mass along his body. The movement skills, the motor, they're all really good with him. He's coming off a good game against Texas A&M, where they basically, the Gamecocks just broke the hearts of every Aggie fan out there after the Aggies came off a big win against LSU to just get smacked in the second freaking half by South Carolina. It was rough, but outside, like, you had Dylan Stewart, who was wreaking havoc. I think Dylan Stewart was the only one that had a better pass rush win rate than TJ Sanders. But Sanders, 4 pressures, 2 defensive stops, a sack, and a 23.5% pass rush win rate. Everyone else outside of him and Dylan Stewart, I think, were under 10%, had 10% or less in terms of a win rate. So, like, dude, Sanders was wreaking havoc. He was getting after it. So, like, he's definitely in the mix when we're talking about guys like Derek Harmon and Dion Walker and Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, Shamar Stewart, Talik Williams, who left the game against Penn State early because of injury. So that's important to note there. But, like, if you're looking for a big pass rush upside, he certainly has it. But, like, don't think he can't play the run, because he certainly can. It's just he might not have the same type of versatility in terms of where you can put him on the defensive alignment as some of the other bigger bodied hog mollies, should I say, along the defensive line there. Let's keep rolling. I got Kurtis Rourke, quarterback out of Indiana. I just don't think I've talked about him on the channel, and I was shocked that he played this week, by the way. Because didn't he have surgery on his thumb? Ends up only missing a game? Rourke injury surgery. Yeah, he had 2 freaking screws put into his thumb. Golly, that's insane. And he ends up playing in the Michigan State game as they're gearing up to go take on Michigan next week. But ends up going 19 for 29, 200 and what, 60? Yeah, he cleared 250 yards in this game, but 4 touchdowns. Led a good old-fashioned stomping of the Spartans. And again, if you're unfamiliar with Rourke's game, I think he's someone that's going to be in this like early to mid day 3 area. Just because with him, the tools are a bit limited. He's coming in at 6'5", 223, but he's got probably a moderate NFL arm. Like the arm strength isn't that big, but I don't think we're talking about an absolute noodle here. So I think it's maybe on the like average end of the spectrum. He's a guy that does really struggle sometimes to push the ball downfield and has to rely on the touch, on putting touch on those passes downfield, and will sometimes he'll put a little too much air under them balls. That sounds dirty, but it's the case. You get what I'm saying? It's not like he's got insane mobility. He just doesn't. So like you're working with limited tools. But this is a dude unfazed in the pocket. Like he will sit in the pocket and make a throw. He goes through his progression so quick, and his anticipation's hella good. His touch passes are really good. Like to me, listen, if you look at someone like Bailey Zappi, who I didn't necessarily love, but I thought was kind of this like early day 3 guy. Like if he was someone good enough to go in the 3rd round or even early in the 4th, I think Rourke, you could maybe throw him in that discussion where we could be talking about back end of the 3rd. Again, kind of depends on how you feel about this class, how many quarterbacks come out. But let's say we get guys like Nussmeier, Aller, they end up returning, Milrow. So let's say we get some guys returning, then that could pole vault Rourke into the back end of the 3rd round. If you're looking for a very solid backup quarterback, someone who can be a high-end backup. But then again, I think we're in a day and age where if you're viewed as a backup quarterback, you're probably not going to go on day 2. So maybe I rescind that. I feel like he's definitely alive, though, for maybe this like 4th, 5th round area of the draft. I think that's actually probably a better way to put it. Yeah, if you're going to start looking for those backup level quarterbacks who may not have like the biggest upside, like think about like Michael Pratt last season, who honestly should have gone a lot higher. I was actually kind of shocked that he fell so far, but that was a very, very study class. But Rourke's definitely very, very interesting. Very interesting prospect that honestly didn't come out of nowhere. If you're unfamiliar with Rourke, former 2-star recruit right out of the 2019 class. His brother Nathan Rourke was previously a starting quarterback at Ohio, because that's where Rourke started his career. He started his career sitting behind his brother, but his older brother is playing in the CFL right now. So I think this dude can be a player. He can be a baller. He ends up going to Indiana, and they're wreaking havoc. Like, honestly, that Ohio State game is going to be huge if they can get past Michigan. Let's see what he does against that defense. I am thoroughly intrigued by Rourke and his just ability to run this offense efficiently, effectively, and just quickly. I'm very intrigued. All right, now we're moving on to the U, baby. The U, my boy Xavier Restrepo. Out of Miami, coming in at 5'10", 198 pounds. I'm a big fan of this wide receiver class, and I always feel like with Restrepo, he's always on the outside looking in when I talk about whether it's top 15, top 10. But I think this dude's a 3rd round player. I think he's someone that, if you're looking for someone that could come in and dominate the slot, like may not be like the fastest guy, but very good all-around athlete, understands the position, very good route runner, can be this chain mover, kind of like Amon-Ra St. Brown-esque, though. I mean, that we're talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown, who does it at like the highest level possible, you know? Then like Restrepo is definitely someone like to consider, someone interesting. I think it'd be a high-end slot player in the NFL, coming off a big game against Duke, where he goes for 8 receptions, 146 yards, and 3 total touchdowns. Had 4 forced missed tackles. Something I did that I really did want to see him get better at was becoming a bit better after the catch, which, hey, racking up them forced missed tackles, that's going to help. But I mean, he had 14 last year. That's a fine number. That's a fine number. But Restrepo's done a great job. He doesn't nearly have the size of a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like Amon-Ra is about 2 inches taller. He's also got a few pounds on him. But we're not talking about like a drastic difference. But Restrepo is a slot only. I firmly believe that. It's nice to see him kind of come up in a big game, because that was also something I noted. Like in the bigger games last year, he kind of just disappeared. But someone who I think could be a consistent chain mover. Like legit. So yeah, man, I just wanted to highlight him. I don't feel like I have yet on the channel, but gotta give this dude his flowers, man. All right, let's move to the running back position. Raheim Rocket Sanders, running back out of South Carolina. Going back to this A&M South Carolina game. But he had a big game this week. I know I see a lot of people in my chat ask, oh, where's Raheem Morris in some of my rankings? And I'll go over why you won't see him in like my top 10. To be fair, very studded running back class. So very good running backs are going to get pushed down, unfortunately. But he's coming in at 6 foot, 239 pounds, had 144 yards and 2 touchdowns against A&M. And he also added 92 yards receiving in that game. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Sanders, he was formerly a 4-star recruit from the 2021 recruiting class, where he played running back and linebacker, also played basketball and ran track and field. Ends up going to Arkansas, was a rotation player early on. And then in 2022, started all 13 games, was a first team all SEC. And then last year, now in 2023, this is where the problems start, as he tweaked his knee in the season opener, ended up missing the next 3 games. And then he played in the next 5, but he ends up tearing his labrum against South Carolina. Ironically, it's where he's at now. So he ends up only playing in 6 games with 5 starts, and does decide to transfer after that. And this was someone that I've talked to about the last couple of years, and that I've had to kind of move down my board over time because of, well, last year was just like, oh no, like injury riddled, and the production wasn't quite there even when he came back. So like, it really sucked to see. And I like that he's kind of reclaiming his draft status and taking it back. It's just, I don't think he can be the day 2 pick that I once thought he could be at this juncture, because you love the size, and I think he's got really, really solid speed at that size. It's just the lower body contact's kind of iffy with him sometimes. He's not exactly always running through contact. He can get tripped up by relatively soft contact, and that's where he goes down. I think the vision's gotten better. I still wish sometimes he could be patient, but I get it. He's a guy that wants to get going north and south pretty darn quickly. But Sanders is now going to be in a stacked class where it's like, not only are some of these guys going to fall, but they're going to fall out of the draft. And I think the priority UDFA group at the running back position for 2025, it's going to have a lot of great options. It really, really is. But let's finish the list off here with Jared Wilson, center out of Georgia. Had a great game against Florida, where he had allowed no pressures, no sacks on 45 passing snaps. He's coming in at 6'3", 310 pounds. And I had to talk about him because he's someone that I just watched this weekend as well. Not talking about the Florida game, but not just the Florida game, but also decided to like watch some of his other games this year, because he's someone that's been talked about a lot when it comes to this center class. And I was like, okay, well, this is his first year as a starter. Again, if you're unfamiliar, former 3-star recruit from the 2021 recruiting class, redshirted in 2021, was a reserve in 2022, did play in 2023, but as a backup, and ended up coming in when injuries occurred. He ended up playing over 131 snaps, which is a hell of a lot for a backup. So this year was his first year as a starter. And if you were going to form an opinion on him, this was going to be the year, right? This was going to be the year. And he has been absolutely wonderful. Like, the dude's an exceptionally good athlete. I say good, great athlete. This guy can move. He's quick. He's got the foot speed. He's explosive. And then at that 6'3" height, he plays with really good leverage. So he's able to typically get under defenders, and typically defenders have an extremely difficult time trying to get under him. And I think what's the most impressive is, despite the lack of playing time, the lack of starts coming into the year, he is kind of felt like one of the more veteran pieces along that offensive line with Tate Ratledge down. But for someone who coming into this year didn't have a start to his name, relatively little playing time, his overall just understanding of the position, I think it's up there, man. It's good. It's good. Like, his ability to just diagnose where pressure's coming pre-snap, have that feel to pick up blitzers, extra blitzers, stunters. He keeps that head on the swivel. He plays with that nasty in the run game, but also like runs with like necessary tempo when getting out in space, so he doesn't like overshoot his targets, his overshoot defenders when either climb in the pocket to block up field or popping out laterally as a mover, as a puller, excuse me. I think he just does an exceptionally good job of that. And like, my criticism, they're very few. Like, I think maybe sometimes the anticipation on the second level could be a little bit better, as there are times where sometimes he does struggle to find those defenders out in space to pick up blocks on. The play strength isn't elite. It's just not. I'm not saying it's like absolute dog water, but there are times where you look at him and it's like, yeah, he'll get overpowered by some of these big 320, 330 pass rushers from the interior. There are times where he gets bodied on that, but he has more than enough play strength at the position where I'm not overly concerned about that. And again, his tape, I think this year has been so impressive that I've actually pole vaulted him to center one in this class. And I'm going to be real, I don't think it's particularly that close either. But go ahead, let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's it for the video. Go ahead, do that YouTube thing. If you want to check out a new mock draft, I have a new mock draft that includes trades. Just released that yesterday, so go ahead, take a gander at that sucker. But as always, until next time, be easy, my friends. Later.